Okay, so what we're going to talk about today then is we're going to talk about how to write these memoirs from the interviews that we did over Thanksgiving break. So you've interviewed your family member and you have a series of questions in front of you. And those questions look a lot like this. Okay, the questions for the interview of your family member. So we're going to talk about how we're going to write this information up so that it makes a good family story. But before we do that, we have to write the first part of our paper. So what's the first thing when you're reading anything? Article, a story, what do we have to do first? Nellie? Okay, not just the topic sentence. You're exactly right. You're right on target. But what, Nellie?
An indent?
We have to indent our paragraph, correct. If we don't have a topic sentence, what do we put, Kristen? Capitalize what? Yeah, we always capitalize the first letter of a sentence. That's right. If we're not going to write just a topic sentence, if we have to write a little more than that, what do we call it? Anybody remember?
No.
Have you ever heard the term introduction?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to write an introduction. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to write an introduction to our essay. Okay? So we're going to write an introduction. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about where were we, who were we talking to, and when it was. So the person who reads our memoir needs to have an understanding of what we're doing and what I'm going to be reading in this paper. So let me show you an example of an introduction. Sitting by the fireplace on Thanksgiving Day, I talked to my grandpa about what life was like when he was 12. All of our family was at my house for dinner. I chose to talk to my grandpa because he is the oldest. Grandpa told me some very interesting stories. What do you notice about this introduction? What's the first thing you notice about it? Okay, we have capitals where they belong. What else do we notice? Lalani? I tell them where I am. What else do I tell them? Madeline?
When it was and what you're doing.
Yeah, when it was, what I'm doing. What else did I tell them in the introduction? Kristen?
What you're talking about.
What?
What you're talking about.
Who I was interviewing, right? Marku?
Why you interviewed
Yeah, why I interviewed Grandpa. Do you, anywhere on that document, on that paper, do you see, I am going to tell you?
No.
Anywhere on that document, do you see the words, this is my story about?
No.
Anywhere on the document, do you see the words, I am going to tell you all about Grandpa's story? We already talked about that. Why do you think we, say it again?
My assignment.
Oh, my assignment was to tell about Grandpa's stories. Thank you, Mrs. Maduro. Do you see that anywhere up there? Why do you not see that? What's wrong with the words, I am going to tell you? My story is about. My assignment was. What's wrong with that, Jeffrey? It's not how we start a paper. That's exactly true. Chain, what do you think?
And it kind of sounds boring.
It does sound very boring. Let me ask you this question. Jacob, if you and I are talking to each other, are you telling me things? Yeah, we're talking, right? You're telling me what you did for Thanksgiving, how your dinner was, right? I'm telling you about my trip. If I'm reading somebody's paper, are we talking? If I'm reading your paper, are we having a conversation?
No, because they're not talking back.
Exactly, Kristen. They're not talking back. We're not having a conversation. So why in the world would you put in your paper, I'm going to tell you? Telling means talking. You're not talking, you're writing. See the difference?
Yeah.
So we don't ever say, I am going to tell you. So we're going to be very, very careful not to use those phrases. So let's look at my introduction one more time. sitting by the fireplace on Thanksgiving Day, I talked to my grandpa about what life was like when he was 12. All of our family was at my house for dinner. I chose to talk to my grandpa because he is the oldest. Grandpa told me some very interesting stories. If the next paragraph in my paper starts telling me what Grandpa's stories were, do I know that? By my introduction, can I tell that the next thing I'm going to read are Grandpa's stories? Yes. So my last sentence in my introduction tells me I'm going to find out about Grandpa now. Does that make sense? How many sentences is this introduction?
2, 3,
How many periods do you see?
5, 4.
I see 4. So how many sentences should your introduction be?
4.
Somewhere between 3 and 5 sentences long should be your introduction. You're going to tell me where you were, what was going on, and who you were interviewing, and why you chose to interview them. Okay? Now, we're writing our rough draft, so it's okay if it's not perfect today, because you're going to have an opportunity to work through your rough draft copy, and you're going to have an opportunity to fix things a little later on. So what comes next then in our paper? Dakota, what do you think comes next? Yeah, and what are we going to put in the body of this paper? What are we going to put in the body of this paper, guys? We are going to put the information that's on your interview questions. So grab your interview questions and open up to your notes. Listen carefully. The first paragraph after the introduction, okay, is going to be number 1 and number 2. This is all this information is going to be in one paragraph. Where did your family relative live when they were your age? Who was in their family? This is the first paragraph after the introduction. The next paragraph after that, then we're going to put 3 and 4 together. Where did you go to school and what kinds of activities did you do? That's the next paragraph. The next paragraph then will be what were your favorite TV shows, games, and movies? What did you do during summer vacation? And of course, did you take any family vacations when you were at that age? The last paragraph is going to be anything else you would like to share about being 12 or 13. But that is not the final paragraph of your paper. What is it, Nellie?
You have to make a wrap-up sentence.
Well, we're not just going to make a wrap-up sentence. You're on the right track, though. We started with an introduction. We're going to end with a, Kristen?
I knew it. I just forgot it.
Conclusion.
Yeah,
Yeah, how many of you knew that? Conclusion. Excellent. We started with an introduction. We're going to end with a conclusion. Okay? So your conclusion then is going to be 3 or 4 sentences. You can make notes on your interview questions. 3 or 4 sentences about why you liked talking to your family member. What did you learn about your family member that maybe you didn't know before? What did you like about the project? And what you're not going to say is, I liked talking to my grandpa. I learned he was a neat guy. This was a cool project. That is not a conclusion. A conclusion wraps up, just like Nellie said, or brings to a conclusion what we learned about your family member. Now, this is your rough draft. So because it is your rough draft, you are going to have an opportunity to play around with what you write a little bit. So I'm going to have you get started on your rough draft. You're going to write as much as you possibly can, and then you are going to be able to turn it in, get some feedback, and then we're going to go back and fix anything that we don't like. We're going to be able to get a little bit more information in before we turn in the final copy to be graded. This is called the writing process. We don't just write it once and turn it in. That is not going to work. Jeffrey, if you have your computers today, because you have to have it on the computer to submit it for your peer review next week. Kristen?
When we're talking about them, should we say the name or should we say like I?
That's, well, in other words, do we write it in first person or third person? That's a really good question. It doesn't matter as long as we know who you're interviewing and you stay in the same point of view the whole way through. It has to all be in first person or all be in third person. How long does it need to be? How long is your paper? Huh?
5 paragraphs.
It needs to be as long as you need it to be so we understand who you're interviewing. So do you need to put in details and descriptive words and all that good stuff? Yes. Are there any more questions about this project or this paper? Where is your level of understanding right now? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about writing a memoir about the family member that we have just interviewed. Okay?